I'm going to walk you through my 4-step process on building a predictable client and, more importantly, a predictable revenue machine. Okay, the first step is building an optimal selling system, which I'm going to show you how we do that. The second thing is to test. The third step is to optimize, and then finally we can scale the crap out of it. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the exact strategy that I've used to be able to do this for myself to get 20 clients every single month predictably. Okay, so let's do the first thing, which is building an OSS. Okay, let's define this. What this basically means is we need a predictable, we need a repeatable, and we need a scalable way to be able to get customers and to get clients. Okay, so what this basically means, in order to do this, there's only 2 ways that we can actually build one of these things. Okay, and that can be number 1, right? We can use ads, or number 2, we can use outbound. Okay. Now, if you are just starting out and you're below 50K a month, I would highly recommend doing this one. And if you're above 150K a month, you should probably do the ads, okay? Now, I'm gonna explain why that makes more sense in a second, but we're gonna discuss how to actually build this thing, okay? So for now, I don't want you to focus on the predictable thing. I want you to focus on the repeatable and scalable thing, because if we have these 2, we can make it predictable, which is what we're gonna do in step 3, optimize, okay? So in order to find something that's repeatable and something that's scalable, what we simply have to do, right, is we have to go into a market that has enough people for us to be consistently reaching out to or showing impressions of an ad to for like a long period of time, right? And we have to also be able to display the exact same thing, right? If it's outbound, have the exact same conversation with someone. If it's ads, show them a very similar ad or the exact same ad. Or else what we're gonna be doing is we're not really gonna have a system, because if we're doing something different every single time we're reaching out to someone, if we're doing something different every time, like if we have to display a new ad every single time someone looks at our thing, we're not gonna have predictability, right? Because it's gonna be different every time, right? It's like if you have a 6-sided dice and a 12-sided dice and a 30-sided dice, and if you roll 3 different ones, if you roll each different one, you're gonna have a different % chance of getting a 1. Which is obviously going to mean you can't predictably get a 1, because it's going to depend on multiple variables. So it's not really predictable. So we need to make sure that we can repeat the exact same process, and we need to make sure that we can increase the amount of volume simply by increasing the inputs, right? So this is why you can't use organic content, right, as an optimal selling system. It's a really good way to build a brand. It's a really good way to get clients, but you can't really control exactly how much revenue you're going to make from the amount of content that you make, which is why it's not predictable. So this is not what we're talking about, okay? Now, once you've defined what this is, okay, and you probably know, like you're probably doing something, right? You're probably doing like a cold email, or you're probably doing like a cold calling, or maybe you are running ads, or maybe you're doing something. The first thing you have to do is you need to adjust it, right? So you have a specific script that you're going to send every single time. And this way, we're going to be able to optimize it so it actually works, okay? So first step, right? What I want you to do here is I want you to take your system, look at it, analyze, are you doing the exact same process for getting leads, for using the same script, for sending out the outreach? Are you doing the same process? If you are, awesome. Now we can move on to step 2, okay? So we're going to go all the way up here into step 2, which is testing, okay? Now this is where we're gonna establish predictability, okay? So what a lot of people do is they're gonna test their outreach, or they're gonna test their ads, and they're not gonna put enough volume into it, and they don't know that it's going, they think it doesn't work, but they don't really know, right? There's not enough volume in here, and because of something called regression to the mean, what this basically means is you're going to have and you're not really going to see the true outcome of the data unless you actually put enough volume through the system. So I'll give you a story to kind of explain what this means, right? So I was talking with the client, and they were running ads, right? And the issue was that, right, they weren't getting a good enough cost per call, right? And this wasn't actually a client. This is someone I talked to on a call, right? And she was telling me that her ads weren't working and all this stuff. She was in this very bad place, right? She was like, my ads aren't working. I'm not making any money. Josh, can you help me? What's going on? The first question that I asked was, how much money are you spending on ads, right? Or directly correlated with how many people are seeing the ad, the volume of people that this is being distributed to. And she told me that she's been running the ad for a week and she spent $150, right? Which that's totally fine if you don't know that, but this is not even close to enough volume in order to be able to test if your actual cost per lead is within KPI, right? Because if you're booking an appointment, like even one appointment, and if you're paying $150, that's like pretty normal when it comes to ads, if you have a high ticket B2B business, right? So when she was telling these numbers, it's like, well, you've spent enough to get like one appointment, right? That would be like rolling a dice 6 times and saying the dice is like not like saying that the dice isn't working properly if it doesn't get one of every number, right? Like probably you're not going to get one of every number, but if you roll it enough times, right? If you roll the dice 6 times and you get 2 of one number, like that's gonna be normal because of this thing called regression to the mean. But if you roll it 600 times, it's a lot more likely that each of the numbers will be closer to 100 because you have more volume to actually know the revenue, or you have to know the percentage, right? Not the revenue with dice, right? So this is where it comes to this predictability thing, right? So how do you know once you've actually done enough outreach or you've spent enough on ads, okay? So I can speak for outbound specifically because this is where I'm like better at. So when it comes to outbound, right? If you want to be able to do enough outreach to the point where you have been able to, you would have been able to book 10 meetings if your outreach system matches your what you thought would be the actual KPI. So I'll walk you through an example, right? So let's say, for example, you think your appointment booking rate, right, which means the amount of people who schedule a call based on the amount of outreaches that were sent. Let's say you predict it's going to be 2%, right? So what you need to do is you need to do enough outreach, right, for this, so that if you were to get 2%, you would book 10 meetings, right? In this case, that would be 500 outreach, right? Because you do 500 times 0.02, which is 2%, then you get 10 meetings, right? So if you're doing only 100 outreach, right, and you're like, you do 100 outreach a week, and you're not getting 2 meetings a week, and you're like, hey, my outreach is broken, the answer is, no, it's not. You're just not doing this enough, right? So you need to have enough volume here, and you need to be able to do more of this, right? So if you need to figure out how to do that by using automation softwares, by using appointment setters, by using different things, you can do that. But you need to have a sufficient enough volume. Now, what's probably going to happen once you've tried building this OSS, and once you've actually tested it, what you're probably gonna find 9 times out of 10, unless you obviously work with me and then you get an OSS that actually works right off the bat, then you're probably going to have a predictable system, but it's gonna be predictably not getting the results that you want. So here's how we fix this, right? Through a process called optimization, which I've nicely put right here. I'm not really good at aiming this camera, right? So what this basically drawing is I'm gonna actually get my other marker here, and I'm gonna draw this down below. So this, if you know who Sam Ovens is, you will recognize this diagram here. And this is basically what a system is, right? And I'm just gonna draw this real quick here, right? So you have these 4 different boxes, right? So this is your inputs, right? This is your conversion, right? We'll just put a % here. This is your outputs, and this is your feedback, right? So basically, I'm gonna walk you through how this thing actually works. So, like I was saying before, we wanna get a 2% booking rate, let's say, for example, on a cold email system. I'm just using emails because it's the easiest way to do this. If you want, you can do this for DMs, you can do this for cold calling, you can do this for ads too if you want to. But we're trying to get a 2% booking rate here in this example, so we use cold email, right? So, your inputs is gonna be your 500 minimum test size that we established. This is what we need in order to be able to like accurately know if our booking rate is in KPI or not, right? So we're gonna have our input of 500 outreaches, okay? Now, we're gonna put this into the system that we have, okay? Now what the system is, these are your processes for being able to generate the leads, for being able to send out the outreach, for being able to, right, like, lead sourcing, creating the scripts, right? The process for actually sending out the outreach, so if that's like a software that you're using, all the different components of actually what's happening, that's what the system is, right? So this is basically everything that converts an input into a meeting, right? And then you're gonna have a percentage of people that come out, right? And what's gonna happen probably when you do these first 500, what you're probably gonna find is you might even get like 3 meetings, for example, right? And now you get 3 out of 500. Actually, this is gonna be annoying too. Let's do 2 because math is gonna be easier. So now, right, we have 4 out of 1,000, which is a 0.4% booking rate, right? Which is obviously significantly lower than that 2%. So what we see here is now in this feedback, we see a 0.4% meeting booked rate, okay? Now, what most people do is they're gonna just like cry and they're gonna look on YouTube for the next, now they're gonna try cold DMs on Instagram. Now they're gonna try cold DMs on Facebook. But if something you know works, then you just have to keep iterating until it gets better, right? This is like how evolution works. It's like, shit, I dropped my camera. But if something is bad, right, that's gonna be filtered out by the environment and then like things are going to mutate, or this is like the theory of evolution, right? So this is what we have to do, except we are like the ones we are the environment in this case, and we're specifically manufacturing or engineering these systems in order to get us the result or the genes that we want, right? So we take the 0.4%, we look at our system, we say, okay, why do we think that this 0.4% is 0.4%, right? Because we only need it to be 2. So there's different factors that we can look into here, and these are going to be the components of the system that we're going to be looking for, right? So you're going to have different components to this. So there's going to be different things that are going to affect the 0.4%. So in an email system, these are the main things. So it's going to be the lead source, right? It's going to be the deliverability. It's going to be the reply rate. It's going to be the body copy, and it's going to be the offer, right? And there probably is a couple other things that I'm forgetting right now because I'm just doing this off the rip. But those are the main things, right? So we have leads. And this is going to be really important that you listen to this next part in a second. So we have subject line, we have deliverability. This one a lot of people mess up on. We have body copy, and then we have offer. Nice, right? So these are the main things. Now, inside of the 0.4, there are going to be submetrics, okay? And these are going to basically be indicators that are going to tell us which one of these things that I just outlined is not working, right? So for example, what this means, I'm gonna draw this up here because crouching is horrible. We're gonna have other metrics other than that 0.4, right? So we're gonna have our open rate, right? We're gonna have our reply rate. We're gonna have our positive reply rate. And then we're gonna have the ABR, which is the appointment booking rate, which is that 0.4 that we care the most about, right? Now, let's say, for example, we have an open rate of actually, that doesn't make any sense. Let's say we have an open rate of 80%, right? We have a reply rate of, let's say 5.5%. Let's say we have a positive reply rate of 1%. And then we have an appointment booking rate of 0.4%, right? Now, if you're experienced with cold email, which if you're not, that's fine, I'm gonna break this down for you. What you need to look in here is inefficiencies, right? So if you are experienced with cold email, you'll probably be able to tell what the problem is here, right? So these leads here, right? These are going to correlate these can correlate with open rate. They can correlate with positive reply rate, and that's typically what they correlate with, right? So this, why am I forgetting? A subject line, right? This is gonna only be based on the open rate, and also actually the first line, right? Now, not as much the first line, it's mostly gonna be the subject line, but that's basically that, okay? And the deliverability, this is obviously going to affect the open rate, right? And the reply rate. So if you're not tracking open rate, you wanna use the reply rate. And then the body copy is going to affect the positive reply rate, and the offer is also going to affect the positive reply rate, right? So as we can see right here, right, this reply rate is not bad. It's 5%, right? So this is actually in KPI, we're good. Open rate of 80%, this is very good, right? So what we know from that is because deliverability is correlated with open rate, and we have a good open rate and a reply rate, we do not have a deliverability problem, right? Because we're getting opens, we do not have a subject line problem, so I'm just crossing these off at the bottom here. And because we have a good open rate again, it's probably not a lead problem, it could be, but I highly doubt it. That would be like the last thing that I would check here. But more likely than not, we can see here, there's a big drop off between the actual replies we're getting and the amount that are positive, right? So what we can see here is we're getting people's attention, but they're just not interested, right? Or most of them aren't, about 1% are, right? So now we come back to here and we see, okay, so the problem could be our body copy or it could be our offer, okay? Now, if your offer is proven, right, and you know that your offer works, you know that there's people in your niche who have a very similar offer to you that are getting good results, then the problem is basically the way that you were explaining, right, your offer, which means you have a body copy problem. So now what you do is you go back to the system, right? Now you do another 500 outreach with the new body copy that you made. You run the system, you see now you maybe get like 6 appointments. I don't know why I talk like that, right? Now you get 6 appointments. And 6, or this would be 12 out of 1,000, which would be 1.2%, right? And now we have this 1.2%, right? Maybe we'll, again, these metrics are going to change so that this equates to about 1.2%. And then we look at the new inefficiencies and we see how we can change it again in order to get it to 2%, right? Now, if you're getting a 1% on email, personally, I would just do way more emails and I wouldn't worry about getting to this 2%, but this is how you iterate, okay? And to get to the point where you can actually print money with Outbound and achieve this predictable revenue system, again, you're gonna need to do a lot of these tests unless you, again, like I'm not trying to just like promote this whole video, but like I can just give you mine that has a 2% appointment booking rate. But if you just want to do this, this is how you do it, okay? And the final part is number 4, which, like I was saying before, once you have this number, most people, they're like, oh, well, I want to double my appointments, so I'm gonna have to get this to 4%, right? But it's just easier to send 1,000 outreaches a day than try and get to 4%. So I hope you enjoyed.